When you give a maximum price quote and someone exceeds it, malicious compliance is probably warranted. We'll get into that story in just a bit, but first, roommate broke my can opener, so I bought a new one that I knew I could figure out how to use. So I rent rooms out in my house. I usually do it with friends or friends of friends. A couple years ago, I had this roommate who was the ex-husband of a friend of mine, and I felt sorry for him, so gave him a discount on rent. He still fell behind, but that's a totally different malicious compliance story. He was the worst roommate I've ever had for many reasons, but for this account, he was pretty much living off of canned food when he wasn't stealing my food, and he used my can opener every day. Well, he broke it, and he came to me and told me that, as landlord, I needed to get a new can opener. Before I get to the malicious compliance, let me add, he was very proud of his Harvard PhD. He didn't use it in his minimum wage job, but he never avoided an opportunity to remind me that my PhD was from a state school and his was from Harvard. Note, I was working in the career that used my PhD knowledge, and the program I went to has several Nobel laureates, and I've worked with some of them. My roommate was pretty much a failure in life and had slipped into leeching off of others to survive. He had no marketable skills. Anyway, the malicious compliance. I bought a new can opener, but I got one that's really tricky to use. It basically works like an electric can opener, but is manual. I knew there was no way this incompetent roommate would be able to figure out how to use it, and he couldn't. I'd find mangled cans in the garbage, not even recycling. He came to me and asked how to use the can opener. My response? A guy with a Harvard degree should certainly be able to figure that out on his own, if a guy like me can. Yeah, so, a lot to unpack. Obviously, the ultimate travesty is not only being a Harvard graduate, but a PhD from Harvard, and you're scraping a minimum wage job. I have a feeling that unless he's actually presented a diploma or something, he might have been, puffing up his credentials just a little bit. I'm not buying that one. Silky String commented, I love that you had some satisfaction from that, and seeing how you felt bad and gave him more than a hand, without any appreciation by the sounds of it, I think it's understandable. But the whole story just sounds sad to me. I don't know. How does someone who successfully works his way through a PhD, at Harvard nonetheless, become a failure in life, with no marketable skills? More of a rhetorical question, but I just feel sad reading all this. Not because of you. It sounds like you did all you could, and still weren't thanked for it. And OP replied to this, it was incredible. It's like he wasn't good enough to survive in academia, but had no usable skills in the real world. His minimum wage job was tutoring students online on high school subjects and SAT testing strategies. And as loud as he was tutoring at 2 a.m. to students in very different time zones, the stuff he was saying was often blatantly wrong. Also, hey everybody, my name is Brendan, and if you guys enjoy these malicious compliance videos, it would be amazing if you liked the video or commented down below if you're listening to our podcast. Now then, our next story is, I'm not a painter, but you want me to paint some equipment? Okay, not my story. This is about my uncle. Here in upstate New York, there's a well-known government/military contract facility that produces very niche but vital military assets. Both my dad and uncle worked at this facility back in the 70s and 80s as old-school mechanists before CNC machines existed. This huge, vast facility has a bunch of equipment in different states of use. One day, my uncle's supervisor noticed one of these random pieces of equipment. A bandsaw, I think, was looking rather shabby and decided to assign my uncle to paint it. My uncle, being a machinist, felt this task was below his position and ignored his supervisor. When asked why he did not paint the bandsaw, my uncle stated that he's not good at painting and that someone else better at painting should be told to do it. The supervisor insisted that my uncle will paint the bandsaw, or else. So, as you can now guess, cue malicious compliance. My uncle followed through with painting the bandsaw, as only someone who is not good at painting and doesn't want to be doing it can. First, just to waste as much time as possible, he does a meticulous job of painting every single surface of the entire bandsaw, including the blade itself and even the control knobs and the power cord. But he isn't finished yet. Even though the bandsaw is completely painted, there's still paint left over in the can. So, what does my uncle do? Not wanting to leave a half-used can of paint sitting around to go bad, he dumps the can all over the bandsaw, letting the paint run and drip all over the entire thing. The next night, after inspecting the paint job, the supervisor calls my uncle into his office to ask what he was thinking. All my uncle said was, "I tried to tell you I'm not good at painting and you should have someone else do it." Update. If I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure he ended up with a special notation in his permanent record stating, "Do not assign blank any painting duties." Well, yeah, I mean, mission accomplished, I guess. You got your malicious compliance and also no future painting jobs. This is a win-win-win. Kulok01972 replied, "I pulled something similar when I was in the military. Note, I do not drink coffee. This is important. So, while at a unit, there was one of those 42-cup silver bullet coffee makers in the break room, and everyone who drank coffee put money into the kitty to pay for cans of coffee. I did not pay into it, though a sergeant tried to get me to do so, nor did I drink any of the coffee, so I never cared about it. Then I was told to make the coffee one day. I explained I don't drink coffee, I don't care what it tastes like, but they still insisted. I put 1 scoop of coffee in. This did not go over well, and I was sent back to make it again. I dumped the whole can in. This time, the warrant officer in charge asked what was going on with the coffee, at which point it was explained and he forbade anyone from telling me to make the coffee again. He also went so far as to instruct them that no one who did not drink coffee should be forced to make it for the others who did. The reputation I gained that day stayed with me for the rest of the 7 years I was in, following me from unit to unit. Never made another pot of coffee the rest of my time in service. I did, however, make sure the coffee pot went with us when my units deployed. I may be crazy, but I'm not stupid. Being in the field with a bunch of coffee-deprived individuals with firearms is not happy-making. These days, I make coffee for my wife, who's confused about how someone who hates coffee as much as I do can make it so well. Her words, not mine. Our next story is, he told me to do the timesheet and send to payroll, so I did. Payroll was baffled. This happened some years ago. The timesheet is the manager's job, not admin. Our manager left, and we got a new one who immediately assigned this job to me. I told him it was a manager's job, but he insisted I do it. I ticked everyone in, 5 days a week, 9 to 5 p.m. Some worked part-time, some worked flexible days, so not in every day. Some were not in at all. Payroll queried the timesheet. New boss never gave it to me again. Edit. Thanks everyone for the replies. Manager couldn't say or do anything because it was his job. He would have gotten into trouble, not me. To fire me, we would have had to go through the process, etc., which would have exposed him. Pretty self-explanatory. If you're assigned a job, it doesn't necessarily matter who does the job. If anything goes wrong, that person that's over the job should be held accountable, so good job, OP. Daidu Fart commented, the military equivalent is usually SNCO, NCO, or officer telling a subordinate to do something that's not their job. I had a civilian banking official, I was the card swipey person at BN, tell me that if I submit my SCNO's paperwork one more time, paperwork he's supposed to do, not me, he told me he would turn off our BN card and contact regiment to ensure my SNCO got the hint. Our next story is, Site Super demands our tools are properly organized, so we followed his exact instructions. I've been doing construction for 15 years. Our crew of 8 had been working this office complex project together for 18 months, with a good supervisor who was easy to work with and had trusted us to do our jobs. The super was in his late 60s and was about to retire. The last night, we had an awesome night out to see him off after a long career for his well-deserved retirement. The next week, his replacement arrived, Derek, fresh out of construction management school, maybe 24, with exactly one previous job site under his belt. Dude shows up with a clipboard and an attitude. After a week of observing us, which seemed to involve texting back and forth with his girlfriend while commenting on our work, Derek calls a meeting and announces a new rule. Every tool must be returned to its designated position immediately after each use. No exceptions. Anyone who's actually done construction knows this is insane. When you're hanging drywall, you use your drill, then your level, then your pencil, then your tape measure, then back to the drill. Putting each tool away after every single use would triple your work time. I tried explaining this. Derek wasn't interested in input from people who'd been doing this since before he was a gleam in his daddy's eye. So we gave Derek exactly what he wanted. Monday morning, we started putting every single tool back in its designated spot after every single use. Installing one outlet box became a 45-minute task. Grab drill, use it, walk back to the toolbox, organize it perfectly. Grab level, use it, walk back, organize it perfectly. Repeat for every single tool. What normally takes 10 minutes is now taking 45 minutes, but our tools were perfectly organized at all times. By Tuesday afternoon, Derek was getting frantic calls about why we were so far behind schedule. He came over, red-faced, demanding to know what was taking so long. Just following your efficiency protocols, boss. Every tool back immediately after use, like you said. Derek tried backpedaling, saying he meant when you're done with a task. I pulled out my phone and played back the recording of his speech where he specifically said, immediately after each use, no exceptions. By Thursday, the project manager was on site asking why productivity had dropped 75%. When he found out about Derek's tool policy, he looked at Derek like he'd grown a second head. Derek got transferred the following Monday. Our old super came back to fill in until a replacement could be found. Took one look at us obsessively organizing tools, said, "Cut it out, you idiots. We've got work to do." We finished 2 weeks ahead of schedule. This is something that you see often in, young supervisors. Getting power for the first time, they have to kind of flex a little bit and micromanage and do little silly things like this. So, yeah, you have to maliciously comply in this situation. It's the only way they're going to learn. The world will be a better place because of it. Jasha E. replied, Derek was my colleague/supervisor for the past 6 months, thankfully working server construction, so everything within the same room. Very competent, very helpful, but what he described as being a bit of a stickler for order was more akin to medium-grade untreated OCD. Our next story is, be careful what you ask for. So this takes place in 2000. Don't remember what month, but I went to school in a small town where it was redneck as can be. Think people coming to school on tractors and crap. We got a new principal fresh from Dallas in a much bigger school district. Now remember, country school, we all had pocket knives. We wore jeans and button-downs, and I happened to be going through the emo goth phase because freak rednecks, you know? Me and my friends wore black pants with chains and black trench coats. First thing this principal does is declare no pocket knives. Wasn't a big deal, no one cared, and there wasn't metal detectors. Then he gets a hard-on for my crowd. Suddenly, we're told no pentacles or Satanist jewelry. Well, even though we were doing the rebel thing, we were nerds through and through. Played Magic the Gathering and chess, and immediately got copies of the school board rules. So we all declared our religion as Wiccan and refused. Principal tried to make us stop wearing them anyway. Our rents backed us up as he had no leg to stand on, so then he targets our coats. That we couldn't stop, but he also declared we couldn't play Magic at lunch, stated it was too much like witchcraft and other students were uncomfortable. So back to the rules. Come to find out, per their policies, we could create a chess club and have a teacher sponsor us. As long as chess was being played, we were allowed to play any game that involved strategy. Few weeks in, he swings by, and the 12 of us are in there playing chess, and the rest Magic. He loses his crap, says we're through and to shut it down. We were prepared, though. Per the rules, unless a club is not actively competing, they cannot be shut down without full board approval. We went on to play second in state in chess, and kept our club going. He left not long after. Yes, if you're going to maliciously comply like this, definitely have to read the fine print and the bylaws of the rules, and you did that, so yay, Magic Club, let's go. The filthy DIL replied, those down in Redneck Land believe that means you can be any kind of Christian you like, unless you're one of them Catholics, 'cause who knows what they're saying when they mumble that they're Latin, unless you're Mexican. Then it's kind of okay, 'cause Mexicans don't know no better. I do not subscribe to these beliefs. Also, I know the Latin Mass went away 60 plus years ago. High school in Redneck Land was interesting. Our next story is Grandma Cares. I'm not 100% this fits, but it's a story that I've never forgotten and elevated my grandma to almost godlike status in the eyes of a young elementary kid. When I was in early elementary school, I was visiting my grandma with my family. This was the late 70s, early 80s, and my grandma had tons of binders full of photos of kids, grandkids, family events, etc. When visiting, we would often pull them out and look through them. This morning, it happened to be me, 7 or 8-year-old male, sister, 10 to 11-year-old female, and cousin, 10 to 11-year-old female, looking through the photo binders with Grandma sitting in a chair nearby. We had been pulling them out of the cabinet and table, looking through them, when either my sister or cousin ran across a photo of me in one of the binders. The picture was of me around 2 years old, standing in my birthday suit, head to toe with nothing hidden. I don't recall exactly anything that my sister or cousin said, but I remember them making fun of me and picking on me. I kept telling them to stop. I got more and more upset, but they kept going. I think Grandma was just sitting watching this exchange until I turned to her and said, "Grandma!" Grandma slid forward in her chair and, in a nice, even tone, told the girls to give her the binder. She looked at the page with my picture, opened the page, and took out the picture. Sister and cousin were quiet as soon as she asked for the binder. She looked at the picture, and then she handed that to me and said, "Here, this is yours," and she sat back in her chair. I remember my mood completely changed, like I'd been given the most amazing gift. I looked back at her and said, "It's mine?" She said, "Yep, I think this is the MC." I proceeded to rip that picture into as many pieces as possible with the biggest smile on my face while my sister and cousin complained to my grandma that I was destroying the photo and that I should stop. Her response, with no other words while all this was happening, in that calm grandma tone, "It's his picture. He can do whatever he wants with it." The only thing I remember after that is having the biggest smile on my face while joyfully tossing those small pieces in the garbage, while my sister and cousin whined and complained. Moral of the story, Grandma always wins in the end. Gotta love it. One R. Ferris replied, "I feel like there's an important lesson here for parents, but I can't quite grasp it. Not just don't take naked photos of your kids. That should be obvious. I'm thinking about the way Grandma gave OP ownership of the thing that was causing him distress, not telling him he could destroy it as a solution to his problem, just that it is his now. There's something there that I respect, and I'm trying to figure out how to internalize this concept for my own parenting style." Our next story is, "You want soldiers to fight you? Okay." This story came from my great-granddad from his first week in training for the Army back in the 60s. Now, in the Army, you have two different kinds of officers, ones who gain respect and ones who want respect. And in the category of those who gain respect is Sergeant French, as he was the big man with a booming voice. But despite this, he was quite mad. For example, if a soldier's bed isn't made to his standard, he'd throw the bed covers across the room and even made the soldiers themselves throw not-so-perfect bed sheets out of the window. So because of this, it wasn't surprising that on the first day of training, he gave this speech to all the new men. But at the end, he said, "If anyone disagrees with me, points at his rank slide, and I'll take this off and my medals, and we'll take it round back and settle this like men. These stripes don't mean anything to me," still pointing at his rank slide. "So, do I have any takers?" Despite being mad and a little bit of an arse, no one dared to take him on, just by his size and the respect they have for him. As I said, there are two kinds of officers. The one where others want to respect, and this is where Sergeant Hayworth comes in. After hearing what happened with Sergeant French and the trainees, he knew he'll do the same. So within the same week, Sergeant Hayworth gave his own speech to the trainees. But at the end, he gave the exact same speech, pointing at his rank slide and saying how he'll take them off and settle it like men. When he got to the end, he said, "Do I have any takers?" with a smug expression, as he thought everyone would be crap scared of him and gave him respect after this, until his expression turns to horror as this 6-foot giant, ex-coal miner with muscles the size of the sergeant's head, emerged from formation with his hand up saying he'd settle it like men. Obviously, Sergeant Hayworth gave some poor excuse, dismissed the formation, and went back to his duties humiliated. Edit. I've been informed that sergeants aren't officers. I get that now, so please stop commenting about it. I understand it now. The story is set in England, so the rules don't apply to the American Army. Yeah, if you can't walk the walk, don't talk the talk, or don't cash the check before you get the job, as they say. It's just an embarrassing moment. Grumpy Old Geezer 4711 replied, "Around here, it's done in the square ring with gloves on. One instructor learned the hard way why we call that guy Psycho. Such events are notes in the personnel file, of course. Funny thing, based on his physical prowess, Psycho was taken for MP, where another instructor found out that the file was actually truthful." Our next story is, "Don't ask me to wear a collared shirt at 9 p.m. for the following morning and not expect a surprise." This one is actually pretty funny. I was doing training to become an instructor in a very, very lax job where jeans are a requirement. I was doing training 3 hours away, and they never told us we needed a collared shirt. I was just planning to wear black V-neck shirts all weekend while teaching. However, the night before my 7 a.m. class, at 9 p.m., they texted us and said, "You need to have a collared shirt for tomorrow." And I was like, "Ain't no way you're telling me this 3 hours from home." Irritated, I went to Target at 9 p.m. and said, "I'm gonna wear a Hawaiian shirt just to be spiteful." They said collared, not what kind of collared. So I picked up one and showed up with it the next morning. Took off my jacket and looked my boss square in the eye and said, "Be careful what you ask for." They all laughed so hard. The students loved it. They loved it. I loved it. And that's the story of how I ended up with a Lilo and Stitch Hawaiian shirt. Well, stories like this are obviously better when everyone's able to just kind of laugh it off and realize, like, hey, I kind of set myself up for this situation. So, a good laugh and a good story. Thank you for sharing, OP. No Aardvark 9842 replied, I can really relate to this post. We cannot wear printed t-shirts anymore to the office. Plain t-shirts are okay. Some reason printed sport hoodies or school mascots are okay. No weapons, drugs, or alcohol allowed to appear on any clothing. They prefer collared shirts also. I have Hawaiian shirts with Jason, Freddy, Chucky, Pennywise, rabbits with Easter eggs, AT-AT, and Millennium Falcon blueprints. I just get smiles from tie managers. Our next story is, only phone calls matter. You get what you asked for. My mother is toxic and likes to have unspoken rules for me that I never know exist until I break them. However, I have one time in my life where I broke one but decided she was going to eat her own words because I had enough. A few years ago, her birthday in May landed on a weekday with the Mother's Day that weekend. I was busy at work that week and was already working weekends and overtime, but I always made sure to remember her birthday and Mother's Day. I bought her presents, sent her a birthday card and Mother's Day card, texted her a happy birthday and Mother's Day, and even gave a very well thought out post on her Facebook. It's all I had time for. However, I never heard a word from her. She didn't call me, nor did I get a text if she even received the present that I sent her. No thank yous, nothing. I was too busy to even ask about it, and with her typical behavior of ignoring me, I just didn't press her about it. In December, a special event came up in my life, which I told her about several times. My sister had similar events, and my mother always remembered hers. So when it came and went with her saying nothing, I brought it up over text. I was told that she, quote, didn't realize it was important to me. I was upset and admittedly angry over once again being ignored and forgotten about. Cue her usual deflection, in which she then turned the entire argument around on me, and that's when I found out she did receive my present, 7 months later. She then told me, and I quote, "You don't think it hurt my feelings when you didn't bother to call me on my birthday or Mother's Day? Sorry, but Facebook cards just don't get it, and neither does texting." Fine. Cue my malicious compliance. For the next year, she never got a text, a Facebook post, a birthday present, Mother's Day present, Christmas present, etc. But she got her phone call on her birthday and holidays. Phone calls are the only thing she received because, as she said, other forms of communication and thoughtful gestures didn't cut it. After a year of this, my mother sends in her reliable flying monkey. My sister calls me to tell me that, "Mom doesn't think you love her because you don't send her presents anymore." I'd like to say I stood my ground, but at the time I was still a doormat, so the malicious compliance ended. I'm no contact with my family now, but to this day, it makes me proud that for once I used her words against her and set a boundary. She never did that to me again, so it was worth it. Yeah, that's tough, to have like a mother not even acknowledge their child's birthday, and then have the nerve to get upset when the tables get flipped back around. I mean, the hypocrisy runs so rich here, and proud of you, OP, for standing your ground. One user replied, "Years ago, I was living back east, and my parents were living just outside of Seattle. I'd sent a package with gifts for my parents and my younger brother and sister. It required a signature, so I know they got it. Just before Christmas, my mother calls me ticked off and blames me for her falling and breaking her arm. She slipped and fell going to the mailbox looking for a Christmas card from me. Didn't send any, as I sent gifts instead. I told her she would still have fallen even if I'd sent a Christmas card, but she didn't need to check ever again and put herself at risk, as from then on I would send nothing." Our next story is, "Just a nice little walk." Sure, love it. The company I work for is renovating the building, and we were moved to a different office building. It's maybe 10 more minutes to commute to get there, but not a big deal. The new building has parking, but we did not get enough access cards for everyone. So since I only come in twice a week, I did not get one. Direct boss said I can go to the front desk and they give me a card. If there's enough room, which should always be the case since we're on 1/3 of the time working from home contracts. A little inconvenient, but still not a big deal. So first day there, and the front desk lady is very loud and very clear that is not happening. Cards are personalized, but parking spots are not. This is an inner city, so no chance to just park in the street. So I call my boss, who redirects me to his boss, who told me to park in her old office car park, 20-minute walk, or a different location of our company, 15-minute walk, and enjoy a nice little walk. Pardon me? So I would lose 40 minutes of my working time. Can't start earlier or stay longer because I need to be home when kids come home from school. So I spoke to a works council guy, and he just told me to read my contract. My workplace is in my contract as the old office, so my work time starts when I reach this address and ends when I leave there. So, sure thing, boss. I park there, and a nice little walk as working hours it is. Let's see how long I can pull this off until they react. They can't really fire me since I'm one of a handful of experts in my country and the other guy quit 3 months ago. So 2 weeks and 6 work walks later, we get an email regarding this problem from the highest level boss. And suddenly, day passes can be given out and everyone has to park at the current work location, even though they do not change the location in the contracts. I live in a country where firing people is not easy, but the front desk lady I had seen before was moved to a different location. My timesheets were revised 4 times now and show the walk as a business trip. Boss, who would have retired in 8 months, got the golden handshake and will retire at the end of this month. Night MGR replied to this. I worked at a place where, since we were outsourced, parking was on us. We had a tech robbed of a cart full of laptops, downtown on video. 2 weeks or so later, another tech was robbed. They decided while we were outsourced, people cannot park in their lot. Their equipment can. I always carried a USB of theirs from then on. Our next story is, auto repair shop exceeded my maximum price quote. Many years ago, I had a 1981 Ford Courier pickup that needed engine work. After meeting with a local auto repair shop that specialized in rebuilding engines, I asked if they could look at the engine and get the truck operational again. After examining the engine, he said it needed rings, valve work, plugs, plug wires, and a list of other things. I asked if he could do what he suggested for $1,000 or less. The shop owner said he could do that. We agreed on the $1,000 maximum price, and I dropped off the truck. A couple of weeks later, he called me to tell me the truck was ready to pick up, and the bill was a little over $1,300. I asked what happened to my maximum limit of $1,000. He said that once they got in, they repaired a few extra things while the engine was open, upgraded some components beyond what was necessary, and believed it was worth the new price. I told them that I was only willing and able to spend $1,000, and that's why I gave him the maximum. He said that if I didn't pay, they would keep the truck. The reason I had a $1,000 maximum was if repairs were over that, I was going to take the money and buy a newer used vehicle. After a long pause on the phone while I did some fast mental math, I told him to keep the truck, and I hung up. He called back in about 3 minutes and told me to come and get the truck for $1,000. Yeah, this is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant. Scam artist, and you kind of called his bluff, and turns out he was bluffing. Go figure. Four-year cop replied, yeah, he was clearly trying to milk you for money. Having already calculated an alternative saved your butt, but it was still a nasty situation. The car was possibly still worth something, and it was yours. If a good mechanic will genuinely find something that will inevitably raise the cost above the quote, oh crap, the X is shot too, they'll talk to you before committing. Our next story is, get rid of those frickin' dandelions. I'm 24, living in my first place on my own. I'd rented a townhouse, this was back in the late 80s, even when poor people could rent entire houses, and was putting myself through college. Not a lot of money to spare, but I was getting by. The townhouse was not detached, and I had 2 neighbors whose homes were directly attached to my own. I got along fine with my southernmost neighbor, aka we said hi when we saw each other, and that was about it. But the other neighbor, he had a chip on his shoulder. Generally rude if we bumped into each other. I'd say hi or good morning, and he'd ignore me, scowl, turn away, etc. Whatever, no big deal. I just took it in stride. Being a struggling college student, I didn't have a lot of money for non-essentials. Most of the people in the neighborhood poured weed killers on their lawns every spring. I didn't do this, for several reasons. Most important, I think it's a shame to poison the local water table, and while I love a nice lawn, I don't think you have to cater to grass. I prefer a more natural look. Back then, that meant regular grass, but with some crabgrass and dandelions. One day, Bob starts berating me over my dandelions. It doesn't fit the neighborhood. Don't you have any self-respect? You bring down the tone of the neighborhood. Every time he'd see me, he'd tell me I need to pour poison on my lawn, which I explained I couldn't afford and didn't want to do. At first I was polite as I wanted to be on good terms with my neighbors, but Bob started getting angrier and more unreasonable, started calling me poor white trash. One day I'm coming home, parking in my driveway with some friends from school in my car. As we're getting out, Bob comes outside and shouts at the top of his lungs, "Get rid of those frickin' dandelions!" He looks over and now spots my friends getting out of the car, and he's clearly embarrassed, but he doubled down and started talking directly to my friends. "Did you know your friend is an embarrassment to the neighborhood? How's it feel to be friends with white trash?" I had just about had enough of his anger by then, and I snapped back. I'd told him to freak off and mind his own business. Several days later, I get a knock on my front door. Open up the front door, and it's a bylaw enforcement officer. Says he's responding to complaints of noxious weeds in my backyard, and asked to come take a look for himself. Being a middle unit, the only access to my backyard was through the house. I invite him in, offer him a drink of, which he gratefully accepts, hot day, and take him through to the backyard. Lots of lovely white and yellow dandelions peppered over the yard. He takes one look and gives a deep sigh. There were no noxious weeds, which I knew full well, as I had long ago taken the precaution of checking with the city to see what was and what was not acceptable in the weed department, and I knew I was very comfortably within compliance. The bylaw cop apologized for wasting my time, said my yard was nowhere near a problem. He left and went next door to chastise my neighbor for wasting his time. I stood at my front door and listened. It was glorious listening to Bob, sputtering and angry, trying to defend himself and vilify me, all to no avail. My wife and I can't even sit out and enjoy our backyard because of all those stupid dandelions. Bylaw cop told him to stop harassing his neighbors and left. But listening in gave me an idea. I knew Bob liked to sit out on his back deck in the afternoons, so I waited. As soon as I spotted him out there, I walked out into my backyard, ignoring Bob as I gathered up a nice bouquet of white-topped dandelions, seeds ready to disperse to the wind. We had a 4-foot-high chain-link fence between our properties, so the view between yards was pretty much unobstructed. I stood at the fence, locked eyes with Bob, and started blowing thousands of dandelion seeds into his yard. The wind was at my back, so the seeds were traveling quite far into his yard. He grew red-faced and started yelling at me. "What's the matter, Bob? I'm just doing what you asked and getting rid of my dandelions." He yelled more, and I just ignored him. After depositing several dandelions worth of seeds, he went back inside. From that day forward, for the next several weeks, every single time I saw him out on his deck, I'd go out and send more dandelion seeds into his yard. Eventually, dandelion flowering season ended. I wanted to think that Bob learned a lesson about bullying, but he didn't. I'll post some of his other bullying attempts at some other time. Yeah, if all of this didn't get him to stop his bullying attempts, I think you just need to continue on. So yes, more stories, please, feed us. Confusable Fraggle replied, "LOL, many years ago, I had a good friend who was a master gardener. She ran the local garden club for a while and won several awards for her various gardens. She had gorgeous displays of native wildflowers, flowering bushes, a to-die-for display of roses, and a huge veggie garden. She told me that, quote, a weed is any plant in a place it isn't wanted, and that if the plant is one you want or like, then it's not a weed on your property. Therefore, if you like dandelions and clovers and whatever else, they're not weeds if you like them where they grow." I've used her definition of weeds ever since. Our next story is, "Oh, I'll smile all right. I, 21-year-old female, work part-time at a retail clothing store while I'm finishing college. It's your typical mall chain. Overpriced basics, weird music, and managers who think the customer is always right, even when the customer is actively shoplifting. One day during my shift, my manager Craig, 40s, always smells like Axe and insecurity, pulled me aside and said, 'Hey, I noticed you don't smile much. You should really smile more. It makes customers feel more welcome.' I said, 'You mean be friendlier?' And he said, 'No, literally, just smile more. Even when no one's talking to you, just keep a smile on.' Okay, Craig, you want smiles? You got it. For the rest of my shift and every shift after, I smiled, but not like normal smiling. I smiled wide, with too much teeth. I smiled while folding jeans. I smiled while sweeping. I smiled while telling a Karen we didn't have her size. I smiled at customers until they asked, 'Are you okay?' One guy legit said I looked like I was about to snap. Another asked if I was in a cult. A little kid started crying when I greeted her at the fitting room. Coworkers caught on and joined me. We started calling it smile mode. By the end of the week, it looked like a haunted mannequin showroom. Greg finally told us to tone it down. I asked sweetly, still smiling, 'Oh, I thought you said to smile more.' He didn't bring it up again. Okay, so while I can identify with what the manager was going for in any kind of customer-facing job, that warm, friendly, Approach definitely goes a long way, but this malicious compliance, definitely funny. I mean, everybody suddenly turned into the Joker. Why so serious? 00 Wow 00 replied, I was working at a small company and the manager's kid asked me why I was smiling. I told him that it could be that I was happy or that I knew something about someone. That was all it took to get the twerp paranoid because he thought that he needed to know all the gossip going around. Later in the day, I was smiling, and he asked what I was smiling about, and I set the trap by saying, oh, nothing. After that, for months, he would get ticked any time he would see me smile, which of course would make me smile or laugh more. Our next story is, no more taking advantage of flexible hours, your day ends at 4 p.m. from now on. This happened a long time ago, about 13 to 15 years ago. I had just started a job at a government agency where I was responsible for a big fleet of cars. My duties included driving the vehicles to various places like repair shops, tire companies, glass repair shops, and inspection centers. I also performed simple repairs myself, like replacing some light bulbs, not all. In addition to all of that, I hand-washed and cleaned every car, both inside and out, refilled the windshield washer fluid, and made sure all the required items were in each car. Washing the car inside and out, checking the fluids, and making sure all the necessary equipment was present took a minimum of 45 minutes and a maximum of about an hour. About a month into the job, my boss decided I was taking too much advantage of my flexible working hours and told me that I had to stop working precisely at 4 p.m. So I decided to follow my boss's rule to the letter. As the days went on, and if it was after 3:15 p.m., I didn't think I had enough time to start washing and fixing another car. So instead, I did other small tasks like sweeping the floor, restocking the supply room. After a few weeks of this, my boss noticed that fewer cars had been cleaned and fixed in total, so he called me into a meeting to ask why. That's when I brought up his policy that I have to leave at exactly 4 p.m. and that I shouldn't be taking advantage of my flexible hours. The boss suddenly realized why I had been taking advantage of the flexible hours before. I was simply working smart. Some days I would go home a little earlier after a car was finished, and on other days I needed an extra 5 to 20 minutes to complete a car. It wasn't a daily issue, but it happened often enough that the boss's new policy created a problem. So, after the boss had been thinking for a moment, he said that we should go back to the way I was working before. He apologized for his poor policy and admitted that he was wrong. I ended up staying at that job for about 2 more years, and we got along well for that entire time. Well, very happy, satisfying ending. I mean, at least the boss man was able to admit the fault in his implementation of this policy. There are certainly people out there that will take advantage of flexible work hours, but OP here was actually getting crap done, and so that was tangible evidence. When they stopped working as many hours, productivity dropped as well, so glad that they were able to work that out. Southern Loquat 4450 replied, nice. I had an employer offer me to be salaried because they didn't like paying me OT. They had me there from 7 to 5, and I said no thanks, I'll just do my 8 and bail. The next day, I clocked in at 7 and clocked out at 3:30. They were livid. I left not long after. Our next story is how I got my CDL, Commercial Driver's License. If you've seen my other posts in this subreddit, they all seem to do something with trucking and diesel mechanics, which was my entire adult career. I think truck driving is mostly about compliance and malicious compliance. I hope this fits here. In high school, I went to tech school for auto mechanics. Since I was little, I always wanted to be a mechanic. Upon graduation, I went directly to work as a mechanic. The work didn't bother me so much, but I hated the shop. One day, I realized the best part of my day was the test drive, so I thought being a truck driver would be the perfect job for me. So I worked towards that goal. Soon after my 20th birthday, I got a job driving a truck. I loved the open road. Back then, Pennsylvania used the Class 1, 2, 3 license system. Class 1 was for 18-wheelers, Class 2 was for large trucks over 30k pounds, and gross vehicle weight. Class 3 was passenger vehicles. The company I worked for had 2 delivery trucks, and I was driver number 2. All was great, till about 3.5 years after I started, Pennsylvania decided to go with the federal driver's license. The classes all work the same, with differences. Instead of 1, 2, 3, it's now A, B, C. Class A is 18-wheelers. Class B is all other trucks over 27k pounds, and Class C was passenger vehicles. Class 3 and Class C vehicles only needed a regular driver's license to drive them. All other classes required extra testing to get the proper license. Once you had your truck permit, you had to be able to get a truck and licensed driver to test drive and practice with. Then take the driving test, followed by the written test to get your license. I have a problem. I don't know another CDL driver, nor anyone who will allow me to borrow a truck to take the test. My only other option is to enroll into a truck driving school. At 20, living on my own, that was not an option. Our trucks were originally rated at Class 3 because they had no air brakes and weighed 28 pounds. The company chose this route so they could pay drivers less. However, with the federal class system, our trucks are now Class B, requiring a CDL. So, the characters. There's me, OP, a 20-year-old male truck driver, Fred, 40-ish-year-old male, the company part owner, and John, a 30-ish-year-old male, my manager under Fred. Pennsylvania had a 3-month deadline to get your CDL, or you cannot drive. One day, John asked me, "Are you going to get your CDL?" And I say, "I don't know. Is the company going to pay for it?" "I don't know," said John. "Let me talk to Fred." At this point, I'm the only driver they have. John and I work together well. I have a great working relationship with everyone in the company and our customers as well. Well, everyone but Fred. Fred bought into the company a year ago. From day one, he had an issue with me. He always assumed I was doing the wrong thing, but never had true cause. Since day one, he would only speak to me if he had to. No small talk, no smile. A month passes, and I do not get an answer one way or the other. Till Fred asked me one day, "Are you going to get your CDL?" And I say, "Are you paying for it?" "No," he says. So I reply, "No" as well. Another month goes by, and Fred and I have the same conversation. But this time, Fred asked, "What are you going to do for work?" I looked at him dead in the eye and said, "This isn't the only job. The malicious compliance." What I knew that Fred apparently didn't realize was that in just over 2 weeks, they could not deliver product unless they hire someone for a lot more money to drive. So they were going to have to comply to my demand or lose 85% of their business. With almost 2 weeks to go till the deadline, John says to me, "On Saturday, take the company pickup, drive to Harrisburg, and get your permit. You'll be paid for your time." I found a few weeks earlier that if I drove the same truck for 3 years, I could get a waiver of the permit, as long as the company owner is willing to sign an affidavit that I drove there 3 years or more. I could skip all the driving portion, get my permit, then take the written test and get my CDL. I did not tell Fred that. Instead, I went to the owner of the company and had him sign. Saturday comes. I get on the road at 4 a.m. to be in Harrisburg, DMV by 5:30 or 6 a.m. When I get there, I'm surprised. The line for the DMV runs out the door and around the block. I estimate when they open at 7 a.m., I'll be about 500th in line. It took another 2.5 hours, but I walked out with my permit. Now for the test. To Pennsylvania's credit, they had a firehouse in every county as a temporary CDL testing site. Due to the volume of people who needed testing, I tried to get into 3 different testing sites, but they were packed and closed before I navigated the line to get in. After that, my office called around to reserve a spot for me. Finally, on Thursday afternoon, I get a call to get to a particular testing site in 1 hour, and I have a seat to take the test. The problem? I was an hour and a half away from the site. Well, I floored it, bent a few laws, but I got to the site as they were closing the doors and got in. To get a CDL, you must pass the general truck test and the air brake test. Then you can take a test for endorsements on your license. They include tanker, school bus, passenger, bus, double buses, think long bus that bends in the middle, double and triple trailers, commonly seen behind FedEx and UPS trucks, and lastly, hazmat, for trucks hauling hazardous materials over 50 pounds. I was there to take 2 tests. I took all but one. I took every test but hazmat. I was the last person to walk in and sit down with my test. I was the first to leave. As I was walking out, I heard one guy say to his friend, "I guess he failed." In the back of the room was a computer that graded your test and gave you the score right then. 80 and above to pass. Fingers crossed, my test was ran through the computer. I passed all the tests with my lowest score being an 87. Each test scored individually. That Saturday, same deal. Take the pickup, drive to Harrisburg, get my license. But this time I left at 3 a.m., and good thing I did. This time I was about 300th in line. It still took about 2 hours once I got inside, and by the time I came out with my license, the line was over 1,500 people and growing. All in all, over that 2 week period, I got about 25 hours of overtime, a CDL, and a pay raise. I left the company about a year later. I continued to drive trucks for the next 11 years. Before becoming a diesel tech, having a CDL was very helpful through my diesel career. In most cases, having the CDL got me to the front of the line and/or increased my starting salary. In some shops I worked, I was the only tech legal to drive a truck on test drives. Okay, cool story, but like the biggest takeaway is like you show up at the DMV at 3 o'clock in the morning and there's already 300 people in line. Like, is this the only DMV in the state of Pennsylvania? Just asking. Still not, Elf replied. I note your fast test taking towards the end. When I moved states, I had to take just the written portion of the test to get my license transferred. It was multiple choice on a touchscreen. I finished the test so fast that when I returned to the clerk, they asked if I had had trouble getting it started. They didn't think I could possibly have finished it that fast. Yes, I passed. Wild Wing replied to this. My kid took her written test last week. They had 40 minutes to answer 40 questions. She did it in just under 7. Like, sheesh, kid. But she passed. Our next story is, going forward, fit notes required. The background here is that during work, I had an accident that damaged my back, slip discs that didn't resolve, and subsequent additional damage due to unnatural wear and tear from compensating poor posture and gait. I had a fit note that cleared me for light duties. Now, most of my store team were, and are, these guys are my family even years later, incredibly supportive of my various limitations. Depending on whether I was having a good day or bad, they'd shuffle things around. We did that for everyone. We worked to accommodate whoever needed a helping hand. Just to clarify that I wasn't given special treatment. My main difficulty is standing still, sitting, walking, moving. Those are fine. On a good day, I can stand the self-checkouts for a couple of hours with some pacing. On a bad day, not at all. Good days, I can work delivery or backstock. Bad days, I did decarting, facing up, putbacks, write-offs, and sitting on tills. However, one colleague was not. She considered it drastically unfair that everyone worked around my damage, so much so that she went above everyone to file a complaint to the store manager that I should be forced to do self-checkouts too. Sunday evening, a charming message was sent to the work WhatsApp group by one of the lower managers stating that going forward, having pain here so you can't do self-checkouts, having pain there so you can't do delivery will no longer be accepted, unless you have a fit note. You can't refuse to do your tasks. I was scheduled to work on Monday, thankfully a closing shift, so I had a narrow window to work with. Monday, 8 a.m., the stars aligned. I was blessed to snag a telephone call back from a GP. If you're in the UK, you'll know how hard it is to talk to a doctor, let alone see one since the plague. It's a nightmare. Anyway, I explained the situation to her, and she was furious. Emailed me an amended fit note to hand in to work. That afternoon, I cheerfully went in and handed it to the duty manager for the shift, who read it and then promptly started peeing herself laughing before letting me get started. A 3-month fit note that prohibited me from any lifting, pulling, standing, anything remotely strenuous whatsoever, and stated frequent, regular breaks, effectively barring me from all the tasks I did on good days. Apparently, that colleague blew a gasket, filed a complaint with the area manager who dismissed it, whereupon she told him she'd go to HR about this, as well as his inaction, and was promptly told that this would constitute harassment and disability discrimination if she insisted. Well, you did want a fit note. Yeah, I mean, this seems like personal. For whatever, like, what lengths are you willing to go to just to prove your point? I guess she must have realized, okay, I've invested so much time and resource into this. I might as well see it all the way through to the bitter end. But man, I mean, OP is disabled. Like, well, what else do you want to do about that? Tremenda Grucha replied, "It's so frustrating how someone could be so inconsiderate, but I'm really glad you got the support you needed from your doctor. It's exhausting dealing with all that, but please remember you're not alone, and there are people who understand what you're going through, even if they don't always say it out loud." And OP replied to this, "The rest of the guys were honestly fantastic, but then they had been there when my back went yet again, lifted me into the office and got me ice, or carried me to my husband's car, kept me sane during my time off with encouragement while I was immobile, and doing my workouts to try regaining strength. Not a week goes by without us chatting or sending memes and reels, and they're all still trying to convince me to come back or ask advice, whatever. I genuinely have so much love for them, which my family doesn't understand exactly, but we've been through so much together that we're probably trauma bonded." Our next story is, No dishes until department closes. Hello all, I work as both a teacher and at your Arizona hometown grocer. After I finish teaching 4th graders, I go work in the deli department. There are tons of things to do. Sweep and mop, take in the teas, the soups, tear down the hot case, which has about 20 items that get tossed out and have dishes needing to be done. I've developed a system where I work on the dishes as I go, and there's a bell to ring if someone needs customer service. Some customer didn't like this daunting task of having to ring a bell to get my attention, so a new policy has been adopted by the store management team. No doing dishes until the department is closed. This is a problem. The deli department doesn't have the hours to pay us past our scheduled time. And on top of this, anytime we work past our scheduled time in the departments counts as overtime. Double whammy for them. I didn't believe this was the case, but either way, this was a logistical impossibility. I knew that I couldn't do the dishes after the department closes without, going past closing time. Enter MC. I pace back and forth through the front of the deli, watching for customers as I clean the slicers and countertops. The only things I could do for cleaning because they were within eyesight of customers. I have about 6 customers from 4 to 7, walking past a 4x3x3 sink full of dishes piled past the top and spilling over. I keep thinking how dumb this is that I can't do the dishes right now, but I resign myself to keep to my MC plans of only working on customer service until 7 p.m. I keep tearing down stations and the dishes keep getting higher and piled more messily. Finally, 7 p.m. I start doing dishes and I finish about 2.5 hours later. I do this 2 more times during the week and get pulled into the office with the deli manager and assistant manager both there. Assistant manager says, "It appears that there's a bit of a problem here because you shouldn't be taking 3 hours to do the dishes." Then deli manager chimes in, "Yeah, why don't you do the dishes in between customers?" I slowly look over to a very sheepish-looking assistant manager who looks at me like they want to shut PU. I said that, quote, "Management said I can't do dishes until the department closes." This started an argument back and forth between Sylvia, my deli manager, and the assistant manager that turned so angry that I got uncomfortable. "This overtime hours isn't coming out of my department. Fix it!" The assistant manager yelled back at her, "Look, you're overstepping here. We'll take it out of mine this time. Just OP, make sure you do the dishes in between customers." I got close to 9 hours overtime that week. Maybe I'll get some new shoes. Yeah, if nothing else, the OT made it worth it. Definitely get those shoes. You earned it, OP. Avid Learner Bot replied, "That's wild how a dumb rule like that creates more work and drama. I mean, really, cleaning as you go makes sense. You can't just wait until the end of the day to fix everything, especially when it's piling up and causing overtime messes. It's like management thinks Time Machine or something." Our next story is, "The dude eventually abides." Hey, party people, it's your boy, Troy! Nah, just kidding. Was trying a thing. It sounded awkward. Moving on. I'm working in the deli in Scottsdale, Arizona, where the customers are weird and the employees are non-existent. It's a busy day because of this fact. A customer comes up with his hands on his hips like Superman. You know that way that customers try to get you to know they've been waiting for a long or any amount of time? Some do the "I'm a little teapot" with one hand on hip. Some find their arms. Not this guy. He acts like he walked into the second hand of a Hims commercial minus the smile. I eventually get to him among the sea of tasks and other customers on the other side of the deli, slicers, and he huffs, "Why do you only have 3 spicy strips left? You guys aren't prepared at all." And he puffs, "How are you the only person here?" Which was more accusatory than the remorseful or showing pity, etc. And he just about blows my patience when I realize that by the time I've rung up or weighed out his chicken strips, that I hit the wrong tare weight, significantly affecting the price. Oh well, I'm only losing $4. I'd pay twice as much to have this transaction over. Before I can say anything, Shirley Temple, sassy Superman, literally spits out, "That's the wrong price, dude. How about you reweigh it right away?" You got it. Enter MC. I knew full well that when I reweighed it and properly did the correct rare weight, it was going to be a bigger price. I accidentally hit 0.4 for rare weight, not 0.005. It made the chicken $7 more by the time the tag printed out. He was not happy. "What the hell? The price is $5.99 on sale and you had it at $7. There's no way. No effing way." I explained to him that I originally did make a mistake, but I accidentally hit a large tare weight that made your chicken significantly cheaper, but this is the correct sale price now. Sorry for the mix-up. He crumpled back into the sea of demanding customers who all seemed fairly entertained. Who am I kidding? Half the people didn't even notice. But for me, it was a great moment in an otherwise brutal day so far. People like this, I mean, the malicious compliance definitely backfired on him. He wanted it reweighed. By golly, he got it reweighed and got charged a lot more, so that's funny. Nage 2020 replied to this, "Well played, just having trouble understanding how if the original weight you typed in was 80 times heavier, how it was not still more expensive when you weighed it at the right price. I think you got your numbers mixed up again." Alright everybody, that is all the time we got for today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and comment down below. And if you want to check out any of our other videos, click the video on the right. I got nothing else for you. I will see you all next time.